Shailesh, I don't know how do I pronounce your name. जी जरा आप unmute करिए, please unmute yourself.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम मुफ्ती साहब,
वालेकुम सलाम.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम.
कैसे हैं भाई? हमजा साहब, आप उर्दू में बात कर सकते हैं क्या?
नहीं कर सकते हैं, आपको इंग्लिश ही बात करनी पड़ेगी.
So Hamza Sahib, I would like to understand what is your understanding of the problem of demarcation between the sciences and non-sciences, or sciences and pseudosciences? What do you consider Quran, the propositions given in the Quran to be good enough to pass the test of being scientific?
Well, that's a very interesting. There's two different questions there, but just to answer your question in general, I wouldn't call the Quran scientific if you define science as a way of understanding natural phenomena based on limited observations, because the epistemic status of the Quran is that it's come from the one who knows everything. Allah is Al-Alim, Al-Hakim, He is the knowing, He is the wise. Allah has the picture, we just have the pixel. And it would commit an epistemological disqualification to try and compare the scientific method with the divine discourse, with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran, in actual fact,
I interrupt?
No,
can I interrupt because there are a lot of propositions?
Let him complete.
You can't.
There are a number of issues that you have raised.
Hold on. Let him complete the answer.
Yeah, listen, the rules of engagement when you engage with someone like myself, if you're going to ask a question, you have to let me finish the answer. If you interject halfway, then I'm not going to even answer your question, because it shows that you don't have the civility to engage in a robust discussion. So if people are going to interrupt me, then with all due respect, go home and start searching stuff on Google to make you feel happy about your own worldview. Or with due respect, if you're going to engage with myself, I've given you my time, and believe me, my time is the most precious thing in the world. Not because I'm special, it's because everyone's time is precious. If I said you had 10 minutes left to live, in order to get another 10 days, give me all of your wealth, you would take your wealth and your neighbor's wealth and your wife's wealth and you give it to me just to get another 10 days. So for God's sake, just let me speak. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Okay, so.
But Brother Hamza, this is what we deal with, right?
Yeah.
So just to give you an idea.
So you'll be committing an epistemological disqualification to try and compare the two. The Quran is transhistorical, meaning it is a timeless book that is not limited by human beings' limited observations. Yes, the Quran is so dynamic and so timeless that we can use our limited observations to reflect on phenomena that God tells us to reflect upon, and we will still achieve the epistemic goals the Quran tells us to achieve about His oneness, His glory, and so on and so forth. But the way the question is framed is an epistemological disqualification, because we believe the Quran to be from Al-Alim, Al-Hakim, the knowing, the wise. He has the totality of knowledge and wisdom. We have fragmentary pieces, and even in science that's the case. Now, just to be a bit nuanced, and I'll let you continue. Yes, well-confirmed theories with predictive power, they can have a probability value. And when you study confirmation theory, you see that there is a discussion on how to give a probability value to a particular well-confirmed theory. Now, there's lots of debate on this issue, but generally speaking, many of the scientists or philosophers of science use Bayes' theorem to apply to well-confirmed theories to find out how likely is it that it's going to change or it's not going to change. What is the probability value? They don't even have a consensus on this issue. So even if you were to argue, but yes, well-confirmed theories of predictive power, here's one theory that contradicts the Quran, therefore your Quran is wrong, that again will be false by virtue of what we understand about confirmation theory, but that doesn't exist anyway. But the reason I'm mentioning this to make you understand that there is a nuanced discussion even in the philosophy of science on these issues. But generally speaking, your question commits an epistemological disqualification.
Do you have any follow-up question?
Yes, of course. I think there is a lot of hot air which is being blown around. For example, you are using terms such as epistemological disqualification. I have never in my entire studies in philosophy of science heard about such a word called epistemological or epistemic disqualification. What do you mean by epistemic disqualification?
Where did you study?
I have studied in India. I've studied in Delhi.
What university?
Delhi University. in the
And
philosophy of science.
What level?
I've done my PhD. What about you? What have you done?
You've done a PhD in the philosophy of science?
Absolutely. What
Well,
about you? Have you done anything in
about 100
philosophy
years
of
ago.
science?
Okay. Yes.
What
I have.
what
Yes,
have
so
you
I
what
have a
have you done?
postgraduate.
Have you done any course in
Let
philosophy
him
of science?
speak.
Yes, I have a postgraduate certificate in philosophy at the University of London. I have a master's in philosophy at the University
Philosophy
of
of
London,
science. I'm talking about philosophy of science.
including a specialist module in the philosophy of science. I've done an MRes in philosophy, which included the philosophy of science, and now I'm doing a PhD. The point here is
are you aware of the
allow you-
demarcation problem?
Yeah, so to allow you, of course, demarcation problem, and then the discussion concerning Karl Popper. In actual fact, I wrote a paper on Karl
Absolutely.
Popper and falsification, and
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a hard Popperian anymore, because adopting Popper's understanding of the philosophy of science actually makes you reject a lot of science. You have to reject some parts of confirmation, inference to the best explanation. You have to also reject testimony, which is now a key part of science from an epistemic point of view, and so on and so
testimony
forth.
was never.
Let me answer your question.
Testimony was never a key part. No, so you're smuggling. What do you mean by epistemic disqualification? Tell me now. Okay.
I was just about to do that. I was just about to do that. So
yes, please.
When I say epistemic disqualification, in your question, it assumes that science and the Quranic discourse have the same epistemic status, right? That's what it assumes. And I'm saying to you that that is not the case. That's all I was saying.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I've never heard such a thesis in my entire life in philosophy, in discussion in philosophy, and epistemic disqualification, where you try to posit that some book called Quran will have some different standards away from what we are talking about in the epistemology, scientific epistemology, and you want to conflate sciences with Quran. First of all, you create your own sort of hot air called epistemology.
Shadish,
yes, you're trying to put a new standards.
Give me a moment. I think you're putting words in my mouth. It might be the fact that English is not your first language. Let me just break it down a little bit clearer for you, and it's my fault. I need to understand my audience a little bit better. My dear friend, you need to realize that, number one, I wasn't conflating science and the Quran at all. In actual fact, your question was doing that. Number two, I'm trying to make a distinction between the Quran and science, because they are two different sources of knowledge in our worldview. And that's all I was trying to make. I was trying to give you that distinction so it allows you to articulate questions that are a little bit more precise about our worldview. What I was trying to do is I was trying to empower you to understand our worldview. I wasn't trying to show to you that you can use science in order to prove the Quran. In actual fact, I spent 20 minutes in the beginning of our conversation, which is the topic of my PhD, that
I'm sure he missed that.
People should not do that at all. So I think you've come into this discourse with your own kind of intellectual historical baggage, and you've applied it to myself and to the stream. What we teach our
can it be? So let me just
give you some advice. It's important for life. And
let me try to understand you, and you can interrupt, and you can.
I want you to understand this. When people engage with someone else that they've never met before, it's very important to try and be a blank canvas, and not to impose their limited experiences on that person, because every person is an individual with their own experiences. And we need to try and listen with the intention to understand. This is very important, because if we don't listen with the intention to understand, we'll have to spend 10 minutes clarifying a false question, because you've come here with your own baggage, and that's my point. Yeah. So yeah, carry on.
Can you take my objection, please? My objection. Absolutely. One.
And this will be your last objection, and after that I have to invite the next guest.
Sure, you can do it. Are you trying to say that there are two epistemologies? One is the epistemology of Quran, one is the epistemology of sciences, and using the epistemology of Quran, you can understand sciences better, and maybe even using this epistemology of sciences, you can prove the propositions of the Quran. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't doing that at all.
Then can you explain further?
My friend Salish,
because
Yeah, you even using language such as you believe that there are two epistemologies. With all due respect, I don't even know that you even know what epistemology actually means. Like, you know, there are sources of knowledge in Western epistemology, right? And you know, even using the word you believe there are two epistemologies. What do you mean by that? Because are you trying to say that only science is one way of knowing and there is no other way of knowing? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that probably you're trying to say that you have one way of knowing, which is through the Quranic epistemology, episteme, and another way of knowing is through the using the methodologies which are there in the sciences, and you somehow you want to use one of them to understand the other. Is that correct?
Okay, good. So you're getting more clearer. Thank you for that. So basically, what we're saying is there's nothing wrong with using science as a method to trying to understand phenomena. No problem. This is part and parcel of the Islamic civilization for over 1,000 years. In actual fact, one would argue a strong case that a key milestone from an ideological and civilizational point of view was actually the Islamic civilization when it came to the formation of the Islamic of the scientific method. If you read the works of David C. Limberg, for example, he cites Ibn al-Haytham and Ibn al-Haytham in his autobiographical accounts talks about he wants to find about the will of God. So he was religiously motivated. Ibn al-Haytham, as you know, he wrote a book on optics, and that methodology in his book was very key to develop the scientific method that we know today. I'm not saying it's just the Muslims, of course not. We don't have a monopoly on these truths, but I'm trying to show to you that even from a civilizational point of view, we don't have a problem in using the scientific method. What we're saying is, from an epistemological point of view, epistemically speaking, when you have a well-confirmed theory with predictive power, which is one of the highest forms of truth in science, you have to understand its epistemic nature. Even if you're a realist, an anti-realist, or an instrumentalist, you still cannot say that it would never change. You can't say that this is a representation of the actual state of affairs and it's never going to change. Even the scientific realists don't say this now. Lots of discussion has been done between the realists, the anti-realists, and the instrumentalists. So that talks about the epistemic status of well-confirmed scientific theories of predictive power, because we know the historical problem, which is you can have well-confirmed theories of predictive power that are now false, right? Even
this is something we all know.
Philosopher of science Elliot Sober mentioned something similar, that you can have past theories that could still have predictive power, right? But here's the point. Once we understand this, we can still use it to try and find out what certain words may mean according to our current understanding using the scientific method. But because we understand the epistemic status of scientific theories and conclusions, in contrast to the Quranic perspective, which we believe Quranic conclusions, the epistemic status are, you know, the status, the epistemic status of verses referring to natural phenomena are the actual representation of the actual state of affairs. In other words, they equal truth. Then it will be an epistemological disqualification to try, if there was a scientific theory that was well confirmed with predictive power, to now say, oh, it goes against the Quran, therefore the Quran is wrong. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you use one or the other. I'm saying you could still use scientific method, but understand how to use it. Like most philosophers of science and most genuine scientists will say, yes, this is the best that we have. It may change. That's basically the point I'm trying to say.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you, Shailesh. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry for mispronunciation. हमें अगले caller को भी लेना है. And by the way, Brother Hamza and Brother Qaisar Raja, Indian Prime Minister Modi also claims that he has a degree from Delhi University and he failed to provide his certificate so far. So the problem is that, you know, he's claiming that he has PhD in philosophy from Delhi University, and doesn't know basics of Islam, of epistemology. That's